Okay, perfect. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining. Welcome to, I guess, Falcon launch 2, Stephen, right? It was about 10 days ago since we did this at a live event in Dubai. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining. As we go through today's webinar, feel free to just comment in the chat with any questions that you might have. At the end of the session, we're probably going to run 15 minutes just for some Q&A. So if anything crops up, pop it in the chat and we'll try and get round to it. So I'm Greg Stockton. I head up global business for Global Residential. We work very closely with FEC to bring exciting projects like this to market through some of our strategic partners, which are some of the top global financial planning firms and property brokers. With me today, I've got Stephen Clayton, head of sales for Far East Consortium, from what I'm assuming is, mate, a very cold Manchester.
Yeah, pretty safe bet, mate.
Well, look, I'm sure you're going to do yourself a bit more justice in discussing sort of why FEC in a minute. But obviously, just from our point of view, being an investor-led business, it's always about providing safety and security as well as investment returns. So, working alongside a developer such as FEC, obviously listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange for over 50 years, massive box tick for us. What we're going to try and go through today is really give everyone an idea and a flavour to, first of all, why Manchester, because I think it's important, first of all, just to look at what this region has to offer, why the city and what makes it exciting. Then obviously we're going to touch on FEC, some previous projects, and of course the launch project, which is Falcon in phase 2 of Red Bank. So let's just touch on Manchester. And obviously, Stephen, you're on the ground there, right? So you've obviously seen the growth of Manchester over the last, 10 or 15 years. Where has it come from and where is it now? Like, how has that transition been from somebody that's been on the ground there?
Yeah, I mean, it's been probably the last 10 to 15 years have been really telling of, I suppose, the ambition and the growth in Manchester. I mean, personally, I live in the city, probably no more than 15 minutes away from Victoria North as a site. And I've been in the city for the best part of 10 years now. And just seeing the growth, not just in the residential sector, but also the commercial, the retail sector. All you have to do is, walk down Deansgate and the comparison that you've got from 10 years ago, the different bars, restaurants, kind of just to touch on that, because I suppose globally that's something that's quite important. We've got the likes of Sexy Fish that just opened in Manchester, their third restaurant outside of Miami and Mayfair, which seems crazy to think. Seeing what I've grown up in Manchester, we've got Soho House come in, various different restaurants that are globally renowned as well. So you look at that alongside the fact that 80% of FTSE 100 companies have got a presence in Manchester as well. It really is a scene that people want to be involved in, and I think that's been really telling in the kind of first initial phases as we're pumping residential property into the market in Manchester. It's a nice position to be in. We've got a huge pipeline. We've got 15,000 units coming, so to see the uptake at this early stage is always reassuring that we've made the right decision and entered the right market for sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was there a few weeks ago with you, and it is turning into what is an absolutely stunning city. And you're out of 80% of the FTSE 100 companies based there now. A question I get asked quite a lot from potential clients and partners is, the HS2, which the high speed rail throughout the UK is now going to stop at Birmingham, and thankfully they're not pumping any more billions in to get it to Manchester. And the question is always, is that going to have a negative impact? And yeah, the answer is always the same. It's like, 15 years ago when that project was proposed, most people in Manchester were heading to London for work, right? If you were working for a big corporation, that's where you were at. Now you've got 80% of those companies in Manchester. People don't need to go into London. People on the fringe of London don't go into London anymore. And,
Yeah.
look at the stats last year, 15% of people that left London actually headed to Manchester. So yeah, you can just see that that's where the growth is taking place. And for us being investor led and my background being financial planning, there's a sort of old age adage which is follow the money. And I think at the moment all roads very seemingly do lead to Manchester. So yeah, I'm gonna hand over to you now, obviously, just to discuss. I think obviously the Victoria North is the master project, and then obviously we're going to gradually sort of narrow down and hone down into Falcon. But I think starting with the master plan is a really good place for us to begin because for anybody that joined the event last Wednesday or for anybody that was involved in the sales of phase 1, this is not just about a specific building This is really about a story, and I think understanding that story is really important to really get a feel for what the potential upside is from an investment case. So I'll hand over to you now, mate, just to go through your slides. And as I said, guys, if you're on the call, if you've got any questions, if you're a partner of ours, if you're a potential client, just drop it in the chat, and we'll try and get around to it towards the end. So over to you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Greg, and thanks everyone for joining. It doesn't seem 10 days ago that we were giving the same presentation back over in Dubai. I must say it's a little bit cooler here in Manchester than it was in the climate a week ago in Dubai, but really successful event. We got a good number of people in the room. The uptake's been really good since, and just really keen to keep that momentum going. I think there's a lot of excitement that sits around Victoria North as a project. There's a lot of developers out there that will deliver standalone and really good buildings, admittedly. But I think really what helps us is it's underpinned by the story of Victoria North, and the investment case, the story that sits behind that, as I'll run through shortly, is really quite important. We'll just start by giving those of you that aren't familiar with us at FEC a little bit of a background. So we're an international developer. It's kind of four key pillars to our business. So we've got a Dorset hotel. So we own the Dorset Hotel. We've got hotels in 25 cities worldwide. We've got a gaming and casino business, a car park business, very randomly, but also obviously the residential business, which is the main focus of FEC and has been for the last 50 or 60 years. As Greg touched upon at the start of the call, we have been Hong Kong Stock Exchange listed since the 70s. And since them early roots now operate out of 10 main countries, and that consists of Australia, Hong Kong, mainland China, Malaysia, Singapore, and then importantly for us today, the UK. So we moved into London in around 2010, opening our London office there. We've got a couple of landmark buildings that we're working on in London. But then in around 2016, moved into Manchester. So we moved into Manchester with the premise of this Victoria North project, working with Manchester City Council. But before we embarked on that, they obviously wanted to test what we were worth. So we used Meadowside as a test case, really, to prove ourselves to the council that we were able to deliver on this kind of scale. So Meadowside, as you can see here, there's two of the buildings there, the gate and the style. So that's 286 units combined between the two units. Two buildings. On the opposite side of the park is Mount Yard, which is a further 136 units. So again, really nice glass fronted towers. You've got a range of resident amenity in there that we completed in the summer of 2022, I think it was. We then moved on to New Cross Central. It was relatively small in comparison to what we usually do, but we had a plot of land and a bit of time. So worked on New Cross, which is really something quite different to what we'd normally produce in terms of the industrial heritage, the exposed brick, exposed soffit, the exposed concrete. So again, that completed at the start of 2023. We then moved on to Victoria Riverside. So Victoria Riverside was kind of staking the ground as the first residential development within Victoria North. So Victoria Riverside consists of three buildings, 634 units in total, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, a range of resident amenity. We're due to complete that now at the end of this year, leading into the tallest of the towers in the summer of 2025. So really close to completion on that, I have to say. I mean, Greg, you were down on site a couple of weeks ago, and it's looking fantastic. It looks really, really good. We're really pleased with how the scheme comes on, and I think for our early investors, they'll be really pleased with what we've produced there at Victoria Riverside.
Yes, Steve, whilst you're on that slide, can we just talk about the sort of sales cycle of those three towers? Because there's a lot of units to shift in a relatively short amount of time. So do you want to just talk us through that, and then we can maybe just touch on what's possibly left within Crown View?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, so there's three towers there. We launched the first tower, I think it was around September, October 2021. So we've got through 634 units in just over 2 years, which is really, really impressive. And I think that is testament to the story that sits behind Victoria North and the excitement with the project. That kind of churn rate. We did something like 350 units throughout the course of last year, which obviously, Global were heavily involved in. Probably sick of the sight of each other popping up on WhatsApp at this rate. So, but no, it's all good stuff, and we've got 16 3-beds left within the scheme now, and that's all that's left. So it's sold really, really well, and that's led on to what has been an incredibly good start to Falcon, which is the next scheme that we'll talk about shortly. So moving on to Victoria North, obviously I've used the phrase a little bit over the course of the last 5 minutes or so, but just to go into a bit of detail. So we signed a joint venture agreement with Manchester City Council to embark on the journey that's Victoria North. So Victoria North is developed and funded by ourselves and Manchester City Council. It's the largest regeneration project that's currently underway in the UK, and the largest residential currently underway in the UK, I should state. It's the largest that's ever been done in Manchester, certainly the biggest in the Northwest as well. You can see there with the image to the right of your screens there, the pink shaded area is Victoria North, and you can see what it adds onto the city centre. It adds approximately 30% onto what is already a very established and thriving city centre. I think something that's quite key within that geographically is ultimately the boundaries of councils. So to the south of the city, you move into Trafford Council very quickly. So that side of the city is essentially hit as far as it can go. Whereas to the north of the city, there's a huge amount of growth. And that's where the council and developers are pumping a lot of money, us of which being the kind of key stakeholders within that region. So we're investing over £1 billion into the Victoria North regeneration. The total GDV, gross development value of the scheme, is over 4 billion. We've got new schools, healthcare facilities, transport links going in that. There's a planned new community of 40,000 people across the 400 acres, what it will eventually be. So a really exciting project, something that strategically is really important to Manchester, and something that's never ever been done before in the city. I think, we produced a short video, and our MD, one of the key phrases he used was legacy creation. And, embarking on this journey really is leaving a legacy behind in Manchester, and across that 15,000 new homes that will be home for 40,000 people really does sum that up.
I think what's important there, mate, as well, just to touch on, for anyone that's been involved in like regeneration projects or, new areas that are getting developed, Dubai is a great example, the Marina, downtown Business Bay is often when you get master plans of this enormity, you often get multiple developers on site, which I know can be great for delivering speed in terms of how quickly it gets done, but can obviously cause quite a lot of unforeseen issues to start with as well. So I think, again, the fact that you guys are the only ones on site, where do you see that as your sort of advantage?
Ultimately, we've done this globally. We've done huge developments of scale all over the world. So I think our expertise sits within master planning. It's a very complex jigsaw. Particularly when you're talking about the likes of Red Bank, that are quite dense areas, and we want to protect. The opposite of what's been done in Dubai, and protect people's views, protect the line of sight that they've got from their apartment. And I think ultimately, we are experts in that, so we have ultimate control to make sure that what we're delivering phase after phase after phase complements the phase that sits before that as well.
Yeah, I think from a pricing point of view as well, you don't end up with multiple developers and price wars trying to like take
Yeah.
everybody's business away from each other, right? So I guess that helps you control that pricing as you move throughout the project also.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on top of the fact that we are JV'd with the City Council, a few years ago, we were successful in being awarded around £52 million from the Housing and Infrastructure Fund from central government, which is for the creation of what is the City River Park. So the City River Park fits within Victoria North, and kind of ties the 7 neighbourhoods within that together. So it flows across with the River Irk, as you can see on the image there. That will be 113 acres in size. So that will be the largest park in central Manchester at that point. We talk a lot globally about kind of park premiums and, what the advantages of buying around a park are. And there's plenty of examples, looking at places overlooking Hyde Park in London, Central Park in New York. I know Manchester's got a little way to go to get to that point, but ultimately, that's the kind of aspiration we have. We've got a High Line that's going in there, taking influence obviously from the New York High Line that's in there. But also, I think in a post-COVID world, that access to green space is so imperative when people are looking at places to live. Time and time again in inner city living, we've seen people expand out to the suburbs because there's not that green space, when it comes to raising families and that kind of thing. So we want to make sure that that park intertwines really well and captures the essence of inner city living, but also with that access to nature at the same time as well. So here's some indicative CGIs, and kind of what this demonstrates is that there's not very much a start and a finish to the park. So it does intertwine through the buildings. We've engaged with an architect that's based out in Copenhagen. So it's a very European style of living, very healthy lifestyle. I think the tagline sums it up pretty well. So the tagline for Red Bank is "Make nature your neighbor," and I think these CGIs demonstrate that really well. So moving on to locations and talking a little bit more about the different neighbourhoods that sit within Victoria North. So this image shows the 7 districts. So you've got Red Bank, Newtown, New Cross, South Collyhurst Village, Vauxhall Gardens, and Smedley Dip. So them 7 neighbourhoods combined make up Victoria North. The one we're talking about at the moment is Red Bank, and that's where Red Bank Riverside sits within. So you can see where it is in proximity to the city centre. I think what's really key to note is when people hear the word regeneration, they quite often think, it's going to be well out of the city. It's miles out. You're going to be commuting into the city. The beauty of Victoria North is it is in essence part of the city centre. It's an M4 postcode. It is just off the back of the Noma district, where you've got 2.5 million square foot of commercial space. So it really is very central to the city. You move into Noma in a couple of minutes. You've got Victoria train station, the Arndale Centre, which is near Harvey Nicks, Selfridges. It's all really, really close. I mean, you can see there, it's no more than a 15-minute walk over to the central retail district. You can be out at Old Trafford on the Metrolink from Victoria Station, even out to the airport in around half an hour as well. And not forgetting, you can walk up to Piccadilly train station, where you can be at London Euston in just over 2 hours, which I think, going back to what Greg referenced with the cancellation of HS2, 2 hours really isn't that long. We've got offices there. I do it quite often, going there and back in a day, and it's a long day, but it's definitely doable. And I think what we've seen is a migration of people moving to Manchester that have historically been based in London. And again, going back to the way COVID has changed trends and how we engage now in a workplace, is people that historically have had to go to the office in London on a daily basis aren't having to do so now. They may be there 1-2 days a week. So they're looking at the cost of living in Manchester and the lifestyle that they can have in Manchester. And on that 1 or 2 days, they'll just commute, stay in London one night a week, whatever it is. So again, that's a massive influx and another nuance of people that are coming into Manchester at that point. So moving on to Red Bank Riverside. So within Red Bank, you've got Red Bank Riverside, Red Bank Viaduct, and Red Bank Plateau that are three different districts within Red Bank. And I think all the different names and districts just go to demonstrate the scale of this master plan. It's not just Victoria North. There's 7 subsections and then subsections within that. But I won't expect. It's been 4 years for me now, and it still blows my mind. So we'll just focus on Red Bank Riverside for the time being. So Red Bank Riverside sits off the side of Victoria Riverside, which was the scheme that I referenced earlier. You can see here, Falcon takes prime position on the front of Danzig Street. So Danzig Street is going to be the high street of Red Bank. So you've got commercial all along the ground floor of there, which you'll see in some of the CGIs that I'll demonstrate shortly. You've got access to the clubhouse, again, which I'll move on to, which is the self-contained, first of its kind residential amenity building that sits within Red Bank Riverside. And there's a huge amount of future phases that sit within that as well. And you can just see here where Falcon is very much the start. It's the first one that we've launched of Red Bank Riverside, post-Victoria Riverside. So really exciting time for us to get this into the marketplace. So here's our hero CGI of Red Bank Riverside. You see you've got VR there to the right-hand side flowing on to the future phases of Red Bank Riverside. One thing that me and Craig established that we think is a really important fact to note at this point is that CGI there demonstrates just over 10% of what the total massing and total quantum of units will be at Victoria North. So, you know, that CGI there times 10 is ultimately what we'll be delivering, which is quite a scary thought, if I'm honest, but take every day as it comes. And you know, it's really exciting as to be embarking on this now. So moving on to Falcon. So Falcon is the building, as I say, that we've launched now. So it's 18 stories, consisting of 189 units. So relatively small, but really exciting brick facades. So really attractive building to look at. It's designed by award-winning architect Hawkins Brown that we've worked with at Victoria Riverside as well. Who've done a fantastic job there, as I think everyone will agree that's seen the site. So again, here showing the commercial activation that we're looking at putting in place on the ground floor within Redbank Riverside. So that whole high street, there'll be a large amount of pedestrianised sections. There will be obviously the high street road that'll run through it, but we're speaking to a number of high-end bars, restaurants at the moment to go within that. We'll have things like convenience stores, coffee and brunch places, you know, cocktail bars, everything that's required to make a self-sustainable community. And you know, Danzig Street for us is not about just having the residents of our buildings going there. It's all about creating, you know, a new Deansgate. It's a destination that people, whether you're a resident or a tourist, will want to come and enjoy. Moving on to the internals. So here you have an example of a 2-bedroom living room and kitchen space. Bedroom and bathroom specification. And I think in fact, it's one thing that we've discussed again at length, Greg, is you'll see on the floor to ceiling windows here. So rather than having the tiny little gaps when you tilt a window open, what we've been working on with our architect on is ensuring that we can have that airflow, and you know the windows are fully openable. So you can open the windows and then you've got a perforated panel that sits behind that that allows proper airflow and for the windows to open essentially fully. And that's regardless of what floor you're on in the building as well. So my favorite part, the clubhouse. So this is a first of its kind residential building within Manchester. So there's been a lot of really good press locally surrounding the clubhouse. And you know, it really is kind of I've used the phrase again, a stake in the ground for our intentions at Victoria North. We want to be pioneers and make sure that we're doing something completely different to anything else that's been created in the city centre. So the clubhouse is a 6-story residential amenity building that sits within Redbank Riverside. So you've got within it, you'll have the ground floor will be commercial space. You'll have a 24-hour concierge, a residence club, which will have private dining, workspaces, residence lounges, a gym and fitness suite, yoga studios, that kind of thing. And then the best bit is a rooftop bar and restaurant that we will have an express lift up to make it open to the public as well. So we will work with a provider that will sit within that and operate it for us. I should probably note as well that ultimately there is a huge amount of space within this clubhouse. It's around 20,000 square feet of usable space that sits within it. And obviously what I've shown you there will not fill the whole space. So one thing we are quite keen to explain is that, you know, completion on this is not due till 2027. Trends change quite drastically, particularly in a fast-moving city like Manchester. So what we don't want to do is commit to something that's a trend now that won't have to be a trend in 2027. So we will keep monitoring that, and we will release further details on the kind of thing that we'll be putting in the clubhouse. But what I've shown you there is the absolute base level, which I think is still an amazing amenity offering, but it is the base level of what will be going in that clubhouse. Before we move on from there, I think it's probably worthwhile, Greg, unless you've got anything else to add, if we move into Q&A.
Yeah, perfect, mate. I've had a few things come through, some privately on my WhatsApp and some through on the chat. So, um, how how do you believe that this area will rival other Manchester locations?
Uh,
I assume people are talking about Spinningfields, Deansgate, etc.
yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that we've got that we have in abundance is the ultimate control to make this relevant to today's living. You know, a lot of stuff in older districts were created 15, 20 years ago. So it's kind of square peg, circle hole kind of thing. And, you know, trying to make things work. You know, we have ultimate control and you know, we're puppet masters of the destiny that sits within Victoria North, for want of a better phrase. So I think alongside the fact that, you know, it is the largest regeneration that Manchester's ever seen, the investment case that sits behind it, but equally in terms of, you know, we're going to control the commercial spaces. So we have control of the vendors that fit within that. And I think from a residential perspective, it offers something really unique. You know, you know, Spinningfields is fantastic, financial district, loads of banks in there, amazing. Bit of a concrete jungle. You know, what we've got is something very different, and what's actually really unique in terms of other cities in the UK, but also globally, is that nature element and the park that runs through it, and that access to green space, which you just can't find anywhere else.
That's on. I think this has probably come from somebody in Dubai, and I kind of get the question that they've asked, and I know it was one of the first questions I asked you as well. So, how are you guys ensuring that, you know, when tenants are ready to move in, or when this goes on market for rent, that tenants aren't moving into a building site? Obviously, it's a massive master plan, it's a big project.
Yeah.
How are you ensuring that it's almost like a clean delivery for people?
Yeah, I mean, this question naturally comes from the hangover some people have got from buying in Dubai. But I think what, you know, one of the main things is, you know, we have ultimate control, as we discussed previously. It's not the first time that we've done something of this scale. We're experts in master planning. You know, we make sure that our phasing is very well calculated to ensure that, you know, if you're buying in the first part of Red Bank Riverside, that that is sectioned off. The main massive work around is done before we move on and complete a scheme. So we always work in sections. So everything will come up. You know, there might be 6 months lag, but we'll make sure that that customer journey is absolutely spot on. You know, we're going to be in this market for the next 15 to 20 years developing the master plan. We want to make sure that our investors that buy in phase one, we want to nurture them through. We want to make sure that experience from day one, right the way up to year 15, ultimately, it is one that they look back on and think that we've done incredibly well to kind of nurture that journey and the construction journey even through Victoria North as well.
Okay, cool. So I think it's important at that stage then just to kind of touch on, obviously you've got Victoria Riverside, which is handing over, you know, so Q2 2025 next year. Then you've got Park, I think section one, 2026 month, not specific. And I know obviously you've mentioned, you know, Falcon handing over Q2 2027. So I guess like from a handover and a timeline perspective, it gives phase one, Victoria Riverside and Park time to somewhat mature,
Yeah.
and really probably focus some eyeballs onto the street, the park, the new buildings that are going up to make this quite a desirable place to obviously rent, but then potentially future buyers as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's 6 retail units that sit within Victoria Riverside as well. Some really
Yeah.
cool spaces, big double height mezzanine spaces as well that we're speaking to some really good retailers on. So that area in itself with Victoria Riverside, once that completes, will really start to drag people over. So, you know, we forget that there's going to be 634 apartments that will already have completed even before we move into Falcon and the rest of Red Bank Riverside.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was speaking to Pardeep, who heads up our lettings and management business the other day. I mean, that their team are so excited about the delivery of Victoria Riverside and obviously Falcon in phase two because, you know, we were touching on it before, but like pre-COVID, you know, any tenants that were going to that business to find out what's available in Manchester, the requirements were so simple. A door, four walls, a window, somewhere in the city centre. That was pretty much it because people were in the offices like what, 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Now, you know, 80, 90% of the inquiries they get is, you know, is there at least a gym in there? You know, work from home. Is there a garden? Is there a courtyard? Is there any outdoor space? And you know, you look at Manchester City Centre, for as amazing as it's grown and developed, there actually isn't a lot of space for those kind of amenities. So, you know, the lettings and management team are absolutely buzzing because they know as soon as these get available for rent, they're just going to go like that.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I mean, we're getting the same message throughout as well. And I think one thing you've touched upon there that's really important as well is, I suppose, the evolution of the amenity space. You know, if I look at Meadowside and what we delivered 3 years ago, that was planned then 3 or 4 years before that, you know, tenants have become super needy. So they really want that high level amenity, and it's so important. You know, you look at the London market in comparison; they had concierges 20 years ago. But Manchester now, because of its evolution and how it's grown into this city, and thriving city, that need for amenity is just growing and growing. So that's why we wanted to do something quite unique in the clubhouse. But also, you know, that street level, we want Victoria North to be an amenity in itself ultimately. So you've got the Red Bank High Street on Danzig Street, you've got the park plus the clubhouse, which is your Soho House Arts Club type thing. So you know, there's not just one level of amenity to it. There's a magnitude of different things that tenant profile will look at.
Yes, I mean, I think that the clubhouse, I know you get super excited about it, but I mean, it's, having amenities within your own building is great, but having somewhere that you can actually escape your building to go, you've got that community feel around it. I guess the first question that I know a lot of investors will have, and I had the same thought, is like, how much of an impact does that have onto someone's like service charge? Like, does it rocket it up to like 8, 10 quid a square foot, or have you managed to keep that somehow quite nicely packaged?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one thing that's really key for us is making sure that, you know, because ultimately we are looking at investors in the initial stages. We do get a lot of owner occupiers in the later stages, and we are keen on making sure we have that element of owner occupiers in there. But equally, whether it's investor or owner occupier, that service charge as a monthly expenditure is something really key to look at. So we've incorporated FEC estates, which ultimately is going to be a key stakeholder within that, and they will manage the park, they will manage the public space that's there, they'll manage all the buildings, the clubhouse, everything like that. So we have ultimate control on making sure that service charge remains as low as possible while still offering the best service. And I think what that gives as well is, you know, the concierges will be employed, the cleaners will be employed, the gardeners will be employed by FEC estates. It gives that sense of ownership and the pride in workplace ultimately, to make sure that journey around Victoria North is impeccable from start to finish.
No, it's very cool. I've got a couple of other questions that have come through, but I think they're relatively price related. So I think your next slide is just looking at some of the price points and payment plans and touching on that. So if you want to just flick through and go through that, and then maybe these questions will get answered as we talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So here is some indicative pricing. This is the price list that we did release in Dubai. So I have to say a large majority of this is gone, but obviously get in touch with Greg for updated lists. The payment plan is something that's really unique, and I think something as a well-backed and funded developer is unique again in terms of what we can offer. You look at our competitors both in Manchester but also UK wide. That initial 10% as a down payment and exchange funds is really really low, and it makes it accessible for a number of a huge market more. So all I can propose is a £5,000 reservation fee. So you've got your 10% as I mentioned on exchange, 10% in 12 months, and then the balance on completion. Something that's also really worth noting is that full 20% is protected. So we have a warranty, or we will have a warranty provider in place that will protect that 10% with an insurance-backed product. Then the further 10% is held by our solicitor in a client account that we can't access at any time. So the full 20% is protected. So when me and Greg are discussing and, you know, we're putting forward an investment case for early buyers on this, we're going, so you've got Hong Kong Stock Exchange listed developer, you've got JV with Manchester City Council, investment from central government, and full 20% protected deposit, be it warranty provider or held with solicitors. So I think that coupled to get all that group together, really hopefully gives everyone confidence that they're putting the money in the right place. And you know, you look at the payment plan example down there at 375, which is kind of where our entry level is. You know, it's 37,500 split over a couple of years with then the balance on completion. And obviously, you know, that might be inclusive of mortgage funds or however that's purchased, but the entry price and the way we structure it means that it opens up a huge market for us.
I mean, for us, mate, that was the secret sauce. It was the same on Victoria Riverside, having that deposit protection. For people buying overseas, it's always a concern, right? We've seen
Yeah.
some shockers throughout the UK where developers have gone bust and clients have been left, dealing with solicitors just trying to get funds back. So the fact that full deposit is protected, is just such a huge tick. Just on pricing as well, because being being sort of investor led and having that financial planning hat on, and it is a 3.5 year build, and clients are going to think, hey, I'm putting 37 grand down now. What's that going to be doing over those 3.5 years? So I think first of all, can we just touch on where you see the price points for Falcon potentially navigating towards over that sales cycle? Because I know you're quite strategic with how you price these, and I think it's important for investors right now, as part of our partnerships, that we've got access to that sort of base level pricing. So do you want to just explain that? And then I think it's important just to touch on, then we've got 3.5 years, but you've also got 3.5 years worth of growth in Manchester,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is which at the moment is obviously quite impressive.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in terms of our strategy for growth of price, I mean, we are very aware that we're in a regeneration project, and this is the start. So we are competitively priced in comparison to the competitors that are out there that are perhaps in more well-established areas of the city centre. But ultimately, as part of that, there is a strategy of growth that will come through, and that's not just from building to building. That's throughout the sales phase of a building as well. So the pricing that you see here now. The next release will be at a higher price as we grow and interest grows and the development grows. Just to give an idea, we're probably 10 to 15% above where we were at the end of Victoria Riverside. So again, it's honouring the early investors and the promise that we'd give. Buying within a regeneration zone. You look at the likes of Brent Cross, you look at the likes of Battersea Power Station. The people that bought in the very early phases of that have done incredibly well, and I think that that's something that we're really keen on replicating. When we were doing the research for the brochures, we pulled up some of the reports from the big sixes, your Savills, your JLLs, and the prediction for 2027 from now is that prices in Manchester increase around 20%. And bear in mind that's a blend for Greater Manchester. You isolate that to the city centre, it's going to get bigger. You then define it as the regeneration project. Obviously, that's going to get more. And by no means am I an expert in forecasting price increases, and this is all data from elsewhere. But looking at these people that do this day in day out, it's all good news stories. And I think, like I say, you isolate that within a regeneration project, it only leads one way.
Yeah, I guess it's also quite difficult to truly predict what an impact having that separate VIP, almost clubhouse, plus being next to, what's going to be Manchester's biggest park as well, is going to have on prices as well.
Well,
That's
it's all new
quite
stuff
difficult.
as well, mate. Not forgetting,
Yeah.
this is stuff that's never been done before in Manchester. So
Mm.
it's exciting, and I think just the kind of press alone that we're receiving from it, it's free advertising for our investors. Because they're going out there, and as soon as you release it onto the lettings market, because of all the press that we've had within Manchester, people are going to want to live there, which it in turn drives tenants to want to live.
Absolutely. Good stuff, mate. Anything else from your side?
No, all good.
Perfect. All right, mate. Well, brilliant presentation. Really good deep dive. Hopefully, everybody on the call's got excited about the opportunity. So whether you're a partner of ours watching this to go and have conversations with your clients, whether you're a potential client, just kind of almost answering your own final questions that you have before you make a decision, then thank you for joining. For obviously pricing, for any more detail, for brochures, for floor plans, get in touch with your brokers, get in touch with me direct. More than happy to share it. Stephen, again, thanks as always for joining. And yeah, have a great week, everybody. Enjoy, and we'll touch base soon. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.